Ah, look at you, sitting there carrying the weight of accusations you never deserved, wearing the scars of a trial you didn't even know you were standing in. Welcome back, you quietly lethal masterpiece, you walking exhibit of everything they tried to bury, because I need to tell you something right now. Something that is going to rearrange the way you see the last 3 years of your life. Something that is, right this moment, making certain people very, very sick to their stomachs. They built a case against you. 3 years. Not 3 weeks, not 3 months. 3 entire calendar years of collecting, compiling, organizing, whispering, screenshotting, strategizing. 1,095 days of turning your name into a verdict before you even knew there was a courtroom. They built it like architects build skyscrapers. Foundation first, steel beams of rumor, concrete floors of half-truths, glass walls of manipulated context, and they stood back and looked at this monument to your destruction and thought, this is airtight, this is undeniable, this person is finished. And then your lawyer saw it and laughed, not a polite laugh, not a nervous laugh, the kind of laugh that comes out of someone who has spent decades separating truth from performance and just watched 3 years of performance collapse under 6 minutes of actual scrutiny. The kind of laugh that fills a room and empties the confidence of everyone who bet against you. The kind of laugh that made 2 people in that room excuse themselves to the bathroom and not come back. And after that laugh settled, after the silence that followed it stretched long enough to make grown adults fidget in their chairs like children caught lying to the principal, your lawyer looked up from that file, closed it gently, almost lovingly, and said 2 words that are about to echo through every group chat, every private message, every whispered conversation your enemies are having right now. Show them. Let me take you back. Let me walk you through what they actually did, because you need to understand the scale of this. You need to see the architecture of their obsession, because that is exactly what it was. Not justice, not accountability, not concern, obsession. The kind that eats people alive from the inside, while they convince themselves they are doing the right thing. It started with screenshots. It always starts with screenshots. Yours were taken out of context so aggressively that the original meaning didn't just get distorted, it got inverted. They took your moment of vulnerability and labeled it manipulation. They took your boundary and called it aggression. They took your silence and presented it as guilt. And every single screenshot was curated.
You get what you fucking deserve.
Selected, arranged like evidence in a courtroom drama where the verdict was written before the trial began. Then came the testimonies. And oh, weren't those beautiful in their coordination? Person after person, telling suspiciously similar stories with suspiciously similar language, like they all attended the same rehearsal, like someone had written the script and distributed the lines because someone had. You know who. The same person who always needs an army because they could never face you alone. The same person who collects people the way some people collect stamps, not because they value them, but because they need them to complete a picture that makes themselves look important. They had timelines, actual timelines, dates, locations, approximate hours. They tracked your movements through social media metadata. They cross-referenced your posts with other people's stories. They built spreadsheets. I want you to sit with that for a second. Spreadsheets about you, color-coded probably, with tabs, labeled things like incidents and witnesses and evidence. Someone sat at a computer, probably with coffee, probably on a Sunday afternoon, and organized their hatred of you into rows and columns like it was a quarterly business report. 3 years of this, 3 years of building their monument, 3 years of recruiting allies, 3 years of rehearsing the moment they would present this masterwork to someone who mattered and watch your world end. And they found that person, or they thought they did. Someone with weight, someone with influence, someone whose opinion could actually move the needle. And they presented their case with the confidence of prosecutors who have never lost. Organized, detailed, passionate, convincing if you didn't look too hard, devastating if you didn't ask the right questions. But here is where their beautiful construction starts to crack. Here is where the foundation they spent 3 years pouring reveals reveals itself to be wet sand because they made a mistake. A fatal, irreversible, spectacularly arrogant mistake. They assumed nobody would ever check their work. They assumed the sheer volume of their evidence would overwhelm any scrutiny. They assumed that quantity could replace quality, that noise could substitute for truth, that if enough people said the same thing loudly enough, the thing would become real. But it doesn't work like that. Truth is not a democracy. You don't get to vote reality into existence just because you assembled a crowd. Your lawyer. Let's talk about your lawyer for a moment. Not a lawyer in the literal courtroom sense, though maybe that too. I am talking about the person in your life, the one with clear eyes, the one who doesn't owe anybody anything, the one who looked at this pile of accusations not through the lens of social politics or personal alliances, but through the merciless filter of logic. The person who doesn't care about popularity, who isn't afraid to be disliked, who values accuracy over agreement. This person sat down with that 3-year file, and they didn't skim it. They read every page, every screenshot, every testimony, every timeline entry.
How about a lie?
They cross-referenced dates, they checked contexts, they looked at what was included, and more importantly, what was left out. They read between the lines and found entire novels of missing information. And what they found, what emerged from that careful, surgical examination, was not the monster your accusers had built. What emerged was a mirror, pointed directly back at the people who built the case. Because here is what nobody expected. The evidence, their evidence, the stuff they spent 3 years collecting. When you actually read it without bias, when you actually follow the threads without a predetermined conclusion, it doesn't convict you, it convicts them. Every screenshot they saved, when you restore the context they cropped out, tells a story of someone being pushed past their limit by people who knew exactly what they were doing. Every testimony, when you compare the language patterns and the timing of when each person came forward, reveals coordination, not organic concern, orchestration. Every timeline entry, when you overlay it with what was actually happening in your life at those moments, shows a person in survival mode being prosecuted for the crime of not dying quietly enough. Your lawyer saw it in under 6 minutes. 6 minutes against 3 years. You want to know what the laugh was about? It was not cruelty, it was recognition. Your lawyer laughed because they have seen this before. This exact pattern. The coordinated campaign disguised as community concern. The curated evidence designed to overwhelm rather than illuminate. The careful exclusion of any data point that would complicate the narrative. They have seen it, and they know what it is. It is not justice. It is a mob that learned to use spreadsheets. And the 2 words that followed that, laugh, show them. Those 2 words carry a weight that your accusers are not prepared for. Because show them does not mean attack. It does not mean retaliate. It does not mean build a counter case and launch a war. Show them means something far more devastating than any of that. It means let the evidence speak without your accusers editing it. It means put the full picture on the table, not the cropped version, not the curated version, the full uncut, unfiltered version, and let people with actual discernment draw their own conclusions. That is what is terrifying them right now. Not that you are going to fight back. They prepared for a fight. They rehearsed responses to your anger. They anticipated your defensiveness. They had scripts ready for every possible emotional reaction you might throw at them. But they did not prepare for this. They did not prepare for calm. They did not prepare for confidence. They did not prepare for someone who is not defending themselves because they do not need to. They did not prepare for the full picture, because the full picture is the one thing their entire operation was designed to prevent anyone from ever seeing. Let me tell you what is happening right now. This very moment, while you are listening to this, the person who built that case, the architect, the one who spent 3 years being your unofficial prosecutor, they can feel it. Something has shifted. They do not know exactly what yet, but the phone calls that used to get returned immediately are taking longer. The allies who used to respond to texts with fire emojis and absolutely are sending shorter replies, sentences where there used to be paragraphs, periods where there used to be exclamation marks. The energy is different, and they can feel it, because information travels, not just the curated kind, the real kind, and someone Maybe the person your lawyer showed first, maybe someone adjacent, someone in the outer ring of their carefully constructed consensus.
Why so serious?
Has started asking questions they were never supposed to ask. Wait, did we ever actually hear their side? Hold on, I just saw the original thread, and that screenshot was definitely cropped. Hang on, this timeline doesn't match what I was told. And those questions, those quiet, careful, devastating questions, they are spreading like cracks in a windshield, slowly at first, almost invisible, but once they start, they do not stop. And every crack weakens the structure. Every question undermines the certainty. Every person who pauses to actually think rather than just react becomes another fracture in the monument they spent 3 years building. Here is what your accusers do not understand about evidence. Real evidence does not need 3 years of curation. Real evidence does not require a coordinated team of witnesses who all use the same vocabulary. Real evidence does not fall apart when you add context. Real evidence gets stronger with scrutiny. It gets clearer with questions. It gets more undeniable with time. And your evidence, the evidence of who you actually are, what you actually did, why you actually made the choices you made, that evidence has been sitting there this entire time, unedited, uncurated, unconstructed, just existing, the way truth does, quietly, patiently, without needing a team of people to hold it up, because it can stand on its own. You know what breaks my heart a little? The fact that you almost believed them. Almost. There were nights, don't deny it, there were nights where you lay there in the dark and wondered if maybe you were the villain after all. If maybe 3 years of coordinated accusations meant something. If maybe that many people couldn't all be wrong. And you questioned yourself. You questioned your memory. You questioned your perception. You wondered if the version of you that they built was somehow the real one, and the person you knew yourself to be was the lie. That is what coordinated campaigns do. They don't just damage your reputation out there. They damage it in here, in your own chest, in the quiet moments where no one else is around, and it is just you and the version of yourself that other people insisted was real. They almost got you to believe it, and the fact that you didn't, the fact that something inside you held on to the truth, even when it felt like the whole world was telling you to let go of it, that is the single strongest piece of evidence in your entire case. Because liars abandon their story when the pressure gets high enough. Only people telling the truth hold on when holding on costs them everything. Let me tell you about the next phase, because this is where it gets really interesting. Your accusers are about to enter what I call the scramble. It has predictable stages. And I want you to watch for every single one so you recognize them when they happen. Stage 1, doubling down. They are going to get louder, more aggressive, more insistent. They are going to repeat their case with increased urgency and decreased nuance. Because when the foundation starts cracking, people who built on it don't usually admit the foundation is bad. They add more weight. They pile on more accusations. They bring up things they had been holding in reserve, things they considered too weak to use initially, but are now desperate enough to throw into the mix. Watch for the new allegations, the ones that feel different, less polished, less coordinated, more desperate. Those are the reserves, the scraps, the stuff that wasn't good enough for the main case but is being deployed now because the main case is falling apart. Stage 2, rewriting history. This is when certain people in their coalition start quietly adjusting their positions, not loudly, not publicly, but in private conversations. They start saying things like, I always had some reservations. I didn't know all the details. I was just going off what I was told. Watch for the subtle repositioning. The people who were loudest in their condemnation suddenly becoming measured, thoughtful, nuanced. These are the rats who can smell the water rising in the ship and are calculating the fastest route to a lifeboat. Stage 3, the blame transfer. This is the cruelest stage, and also the most predictable. The coalition will start to fracture, and when it fractures, the person who built the case, the architect, they are going to find themselves standing alone in the middle of a room that used to be full of supporters. Because here is what happens when a coordinated campaign gets exposed. Nobody wants to be the face of it. Everyone wants to be the person who was misled, not the person who did the misleading. So the coalition members start pointing at each other. They told me to say that. They showed me those screenshots. They organized the whole thing. I was just following along. And the architect, the one who spent 3 years obsessing over your destruction, they are about to learn the loneliest lesson in human dynamics. The people who join you to tear someone else down will join someone else to tear you down. Loyalty built on shared hatred is not loyalty. It is a temporary alliance that dissolves the second the cost of maintaining it exceeds the benefit. Your lawyer knew all of this. That is why they laughed. Not at the accusation, at the construction, at the obvious seams, at the places where the story was stitched together with thread that doesn't match, at the way the evidence, when you actually laid it all out, told a completely different story than the one it was supposed to tell. A story not of a villain, but of a person who was targeted precisely because they could not be controlled. Prosecuted not for what they did wrong, but for what they did right that made the wrong people uncomfortable. Show them. That is all you have to do now. Not fight them, not match their energy, not build a counter-campaign, not recruit your own coalition, not spend 3 years of your life constructing an obsession of your own. Just show them. The real screenshots, the uncropped ones, the real timeline, the complete one, the real story, the one that includes all the parts they had to remove to make their version work. And here is the thing about truth that your accusers are about to learn the hard way. Truth does not need volume. It does not need repetition. It does not need a team. It does not need 3 years of construction. It just needs to be seen once by the right eyes. And everything built on the lie starts trembling, not collapsing all at once. That would be too dramatic, too satisfying, too clean. It trembles slowly, over weeks, over months, one relationship at a time, one reputation at a time, one sleepless night at a time, until the people who spent 3 years building their case against you are living in the rubble of their own creation, wondering how something that felt so certain could fall apart so completely. And you who survived 3 years of this, you who held on to the truth when the truth felt like the loneliest place on earth. You who didn't break, didn't retaliate, didn't become the version of yourself they needed you to be to justify their campaign. You are standing, still standing, not because you fought them, because you outlasted them, you outpatienced them. You let them exhaust themselves against a wall they thought was a person, and it turns out the wall was the truth, and the truth doesn't get tired. The truth doesn't need coffee at 2 a.m. to keep building its case. The truth doesn't need allies or group chats or spreadsheets. The truth just sits there, being true. And eventually, everyone who bet against it has to come sit in its living room and explain themselves. So here is what I need you to understand. You are not the defendant anymore. You never were, really. You were cast in that role by people who needed a villain to justify their own behavior. But the case they built, the beautiful, detailed 3-year masterpiece of manipulation they constructed, it has just been read by someone who knows how to read. And what they read wasn't a conviction, it was a confession. Every piece of evidence your accusers collected was a confession of their own obsession. Every screenshot was a confession of surveillance. Every coordinated testimony was a confession of conspiracy. Every timeline was a confession of fixation so deep it borders on something clinical. They weren't building a case against you. They were documenting their own pathology, and they handed that documentation, organized and color-coded and tabbed, to someone who recognized it for exactly what it was. Your lawyer laughed because the evidence convicted the prosecution. 3 years of work, exposed in 6 minutes, by someone who simply looked at it without wanting it to be true. You don't have to do anything dramatic now. You don't have to post. You don't have to explain. You don't have to defend or attack or perform healing for an audience that didn't earn it. You just have to keep existing. Keep being the person who held on to the truth. Keep being the person who didn't become ugly when ugly was being done to them. Keep being the living, breathing contradiction to every lie they told. Because the funniest part, the part that would be cruel if it wasn't so perfectly poetic, is that you being okay is the one outcome they never planned for. They planned for your destruction. They planned for your downfall. They planned for the moment you would crack under the weight of 3 years of pressure and prove them right. But you didn't crack. You didn't fall. You didn't prove anything except that you are exactly who you always said you were.
Now, our operation is small, but there's a lot of potential.
And now they have to live with that. They have to watch you exist in peace while their carefully constructed narrative dissolves around them like sugar in hot water, slowly, sweetly, irreversibly. Show them, not your anger, not your pain, not your revenge. Show them you, the real, uncropped, unedited, full context you. That is the only evidence that matters, and it is the one thing their 3-year case was specifically designed to make sure nobody ever saw. Well, someone just saw it, and they laughed, and then they said 2 words that changed everything, and now those 2 words are yours. Do with them what you will, but know this, the case is closed, and the verdict, the real one, the one that was always going to come, was never in doubt, not to you, not to anyone who bothered to actually look, and definitely not to the person sitting across from that file right now, shaking their head and wondering how anyone could spend 3 years building something so fragile that the truth knocked it over like wind through a house of cards. You're free. You were always free. They just made you forget for a while, but the lawyer remembered, and now so do you.